Welcome to another episode of the Ask Amity Show. My name's Edmund.
I'm Jennifer.
And I'm Cindy.
And we're the attorneys here at Amity Law Group in Rosemead, California.
Today's a fun topic. We're going to talk about how to protect your kids' inheritance from your spouse's second marriage. What that means is, in case something happens to you and your spouse remarries, how do you make sure that your kids get the inheritance that you want them to get, so that either your spouse doesn't spend all the money, or their spouse doesn't also spend all the money or take all the money away from your children. This is a very timely topic for a lot of clients of ours who either have a huge age gap. I think that's one of the biggest scenarios that comes up.
Yeah, I think some clients that come in, maybe the ages between the two spouses are quite large, and so there's a concern that if the older spouse maybe passes away first, then the younger spouse will he or she remain a widow for this lengthy period of time, or perhaps he or she will meet somebody and get married again. And so in that situation, they're concerned, because they've accumulated some assets and they believe that, at least half of what they own together should go to who they designated, maybe their own children, or they're also concerned if the second spouse marries again and if they have other kids with the new husband or wife, then, they don't want their kids to be left out of all the inheritance. So that's always a common issue that we face.
So there are certain provisions, certain things that we can write into the trust to make sure that your funds go where you want it to go, such as to your children or to your spouse, and how they should spend it. One of the other issues that we often hear about is an omitted spouse situation, where there is a second marriage, but the second spouse was never mentioned in the trust. So in that scenario, when you fail to amend your trust to add your new spouse, either by saying you would like to provide for that spouse in this way, or to not provide for the spouse in this way, either way you need to mention the second spouse, the new spouse. If you don't, then it becomes an omitted spouse situation, and that omitted spouse can challenge the trust, whereby they can say that they were inadvertently left out of the trust and should receive half of what the trust assets are.
Yeah, so I think it gets really technical, so maybe an example would clarify kind of the situation. So in the past, we've had a client come in, they were the children, right? And so the father passed away, but before he passed away, he had a second marriage. So now the question is, does the second spouse that he married again, if that spouse is entitled to the trust assets, or would it all go to the children? But because this father, he failed to amend his trust to add his second spouse in there, whether or not he says he intentionally omitted her or he wanted to provide for her, he didn't do any of that, right?
Right.
And so now the spouse is saying, hey, I was omitted unintentionally. He told me that he was going to provide for me, and so now she's challenging the trust, even though the kids are saying, hey, that has nothing to do with this new stepmom, because she was only married to this husband for a short amount of time. Right. And so that's kind of where we see the situation where it's important that if the client or whoever, your parents or your friend that if they have a second marriage, maybe remind them they need to do an amendment to the trust, either to add the spouse in there as a beneficiary, or state that they intentionally omitted her or him.
So we're always advising our clients to make sure that you review your trust every couple of years, and also if there are changes in the family dynamics, and if there are changes in the trust assets. If you've got a new house, or if you've got a new investment fund, a new bank account, something like anything like that, you want to make sure that you review and revise your trust so that it is current and updated.
Right, and what Cindy and Jennifer just talked about are scenarios where someone has a trust for their kids. There's other ways to leave the kids' inheritance in a safe place, or plan ahead to make sure that your kids do get the inheritance that you want them to have. And so there's other strategies like giving them gifts during your lifetime, either by transferring your assets to them in specific scenarios. But there's certain gift tax issues that you really need to be concerned with, as well as other pitfalls when it comes to transferring your assets during your lifetime to your kids. So a lot of times, what we advise our clients to do is to make sure that there is not only a plan, but also that they put their assets in a living trust. State specifically, how the assets are going to be managed for the kids and how much the kids will receive in order to protect their kids' inheritance, particularly from the spouse's second marriage.
Yeah, and I think in certain situations where the couple is coming in to create the living trust for the first time, we will have this discussion with them to see how their marriage is, how their relationship is, how comfortable they are with the surviving spouse taking over control of everything, or if they're not comfortable, then we'll customize the trust where we'll split the assets in half, and whoever does survive will only have access to his or her half, and the deceased spouse's side remains intact. So that that half will still go directly to the listed beneficiaries. So that's always something that we'll discuss with our clients as well.
Right. So I think that the takeaway of this episode is to make sure that you plan ahead. You make sure that you've got the contingencies in place to make sure that your kids get your inheritance, get their inheritance, and protect them from any sorts of pitfalls. So yeah, that's it for this episode. Thank you so much for joining us. If you have any questions about estate planning that you'd like us to answer, just leave a comment below and we'll try to answer it on our next show. See you next time.